Hi. So today I am drawing a little bar that I went to last weekend in Donegal. It was a little bar called Patsy and I just thought it looked very cute and quaint. But on Googling it, it seems it's quite a popular bar. I suppose like the main ones in Belfast are, like the Crown and Lavery's and things like that there. So I sketched it out first and then I went over it with my black fountain pen. And in case anybody is interested in which fountain pen I use the Carousel one, and it was £15 and I get the fine fountain nib. It's just sitting on the right of the page there, you can just see it. I also use a few different sizes of paintbrush in this picture. I do most of my fine details with a small one, usually the Series 7 by Winsor & Newton, and it's a size 3. But then I also like the Raven paintbrush. I can't remember who makes these. I just buy so many paintbrushes all the time, but it's a size 3. And it's quite a chunky little brush for doing backwashes and things. So after drawing round the picture, I went straight into the red because this little pub was pretty much 3 colours: red, black, and like a cream for the building. And there was a lot of photos on it online, and I didn't take one myself, so I had to like amalgamate about 4 different pictures. When I was there, it had a front banner dividing it from the street, but I didn't put that on because, to be honest, the pub was just too cute. The one thing that I found really hard to get online was the little doors. I can't know how to make those up, but I might go back into this in a while. I'll maybe Google Patsy Dance doors, or if anybody has a photo, please send them to me. So I started off by going around in fine detail with the red. I like to paint with loads of different paints. I use watercolours, I use inks. I have about 7 different paint palettes. I use about 7 or 8 different colouring pencils. But I suppose my main paintbrushes, or my main paints that I use would be probably, if I can spell this right, is Centilier. I use them a lot. I also like to use Hoban, and I have to say that I do also kind of buy loose paints to get certain colours. They're expensive to do it that way, and to be honest, I don't buy a lot, but there's a couple of colours from a particular guy called Daniel Smith that I use a lot. On a different video, I'll maybe show you which ones I use because I have so many. And to be honest, most of them I don't use. I love his red, which I'm painting with now, and he has a lovely green. I know the green's called underwater green, and I love it as well. But to be honest with you, generally I'll mix paints and I'll get the colours that I need. And my Centilier is probably my most favourite paint pot, and I use it the most. It's got every colour you could possibly need. Now, if you're starting out with watercolour, you don't need expensive paints. I've been painting for a long time, and I have invested in these paints. But when I first started, my favourite paints were ones called White Nights, and I love them so much because when you put a tiny little bit of water on them, they just come to life, and they are so beautiful. And I use these for years and years. In fact, most of my work that I sell on my website and in my shop is from these little White Nights watercolour sets. It's only in years to come that I've had a bit more money to spend, and I've invested in more expensive paints. And I suppose it's like anything, when you buy the next new thing, you use it more than the other one. I do have my White Nights palette somewhere about here in my little studio. I need to have a good look for it, but I loved it and I probably used it for 10 years. Moving on, as you can see, I'm still going round the little red on this little pub. So it had little, like, I don't know how to describe them, little surrounds on every window and every door, and it was this beautiful bright red colour, which you see in a lot of little Irish pubs. especially in Donegal. And I just coloured it all in, got it all ready, done as much of that red as I could, and then kind of regretted it when I went on to the next colour because it smudged it. But it was just an urge, and if you paint you'll know there's just something that pops out at you and you have to paint. You'll notice on the left and right hand side that I have little sheets of paper. I use these to, number one, test the colours that I have, and also sometimes I just might have too much paint on my paintbrush and this just keeps it clean. Now you'll see me moving into ink. So this ink is by Robert Oyster, or Oster, and it's fountain pen ink. I love ink. Ink painting has just happened for me over the past, I would say, 2 years. I started off with 1 or 2 colours and now I've got about 60. I love it. It's very cheap. You get nice bright colours. The only thing I will say is if you do what I do and scan your work into your computer and edit it that way and then go to send to the printers, a lot of the colour will be lost because some of those inks are so bright. There's a beautiful company online called Ferris Wheel Press, and these inks are extremely expensive, and I'm not gonna lie, I have indulged in a few of them over the past while, but I only buy certain colours in them that I know that I'll use, and the rest I'll fill up with the cheaper brands. My favourite ink actually overall is the Winsor & Newton ink. I use it actually the most, and it's pretty cheap. You can buy little sets of it on Amazon, or you can go into like art supply shops like even Bradbury Graphics in the city centre have it, and also like Cult Pens, Cass Art Supplies, Jackson's Art, they all do this art. And there's also another ink that I used, and it's Diamine, I think that's how you pronounce it. And I love their inks too, and they are about £2.59 a colour, and I use them an awful lot as well. And again, they're not overly big, so, and they're not expensive, so if you really don't use that colour, well then it doesn't really matter. The Ferris Wheel Press one that I indulged in, which I absolutely love, I have lost the box for and I can't remember the colour, but it's like a greeny gold. It's really nice if I'm doing commissions for people and I can add that little bit of gold on. But if you're printing your work and scan it into your computer, this will not work. It's useless. It just completely gets lost when you scan it in. So I think my next stage here on this painting is with the large brush. Yeah. So you can see me with this large kind of brush. I think it's actually by Jackson's Art Supplies, which is online, and it's called Raven, and it is a number 3/0, whatever that means. I have a little code on the brush if you're looking for it. It is a BR52830. And I love this brush. It's I suppose one of those like Japanese sort of style brushes where you've got the really, really, really fine tip. And when you first start to use it, it's a bit intimidating because you think, oh my goodness, it's quite big. But it's not. It's got a really fine tip. I use this a lot. You'll see me painting most of the rest of this picture with this paintbrush. I don't use inks on this top bit here because I wanted a more grey colour, and that ink is hard to say in this, but it's more blue, which is kind of the colour of a window pane, I suppose. So here I am using just colours that I've mixed in my little paint palette, and I've painted the roof, and then I've got the image in front of me on my computer which you can't see, and then I've realised that the little chimney stacks are actually grey as well. I was thinking they would have been the same colour as the building, but no, they're grey, so I've coloured them in as well. And later on, when I'm nearly done, I will go in with colouring pencils and maybe add a little bit of detail to these. So I'm just adding on a little bit of dark colour onto the windows because there'd be reflection. You could, if you wanted, maybe go in with a white brush and add a bit of light. I haven't done so on this, but I may do that when I go to scan this in and send it to the printers. If I print this, I'll see how I feel. And yes, I'm getting to the little porch and things. So there's a lot of photos of this pub online, different doorways here and different things. I've kind of taken bits of it. It's probably not exactly correct. When I was there was this tunnel. It had a red side, I remember, and it had little chairs sitting outside, and there was a few people just sitting there having a wee chat. There was black doors, and you kind of could come into the back of the side of the pub in this where the music was playing. It also had the little summer seats outside, but they had screens up, like I said earlier, so I didn't put the screens on. Now I'm getting back in again, and I'm using the thick brush again, and I'm just going to do a little wash on the building. It was kind of like an off-white creamy colour. So I mixed a few colours in my palette. Generally, these colours are always made by previous mixing, and I've added a bit of water and sort of get this grey creamy colour, and I've got it that way. So at this point I was just still filling in the blank. I don't know whether you want me to speed this up. This is my first sort of video showing you my process, so I've kind of kept it all in. It roughly takes me about half an hour to paint one of these, and probably about 20 minutes or so to sketch and outline it with blank. So all in all, give or take, probably an hour all in, and I'm finished one of these when I set my mind to it. Other days, it could be 3 hours. It really depends on my mood. Because I'm filming this and I'm very aware of the camera, I probably blitzed it. But if it was a very big picture, or I was just maybe not in the mood, I would come back and forth to the picture. Or I might draw it, outline it, and then leave it. And it could sit for months before I go back and paint it. And then when I'm in the mood to paint, I will lift my little stack of things that I've drew out and I will paint it. I decided to show you my process this time, so I did it all in 1 hour. But that is quite rare to do that in 1 hour. Balloons are very easy to do because they don't really change, and they're just the way they are. I find them not really difficult. I find it harder to draw things like, animals. I'm really I find dogs and cats just really hard to draw. If somebody asks me to draw one, I'm like, no. And if you draw yourself, you'll know there's things that there's the red smudge, and I shouldn't have done that. But if you draw yourself, you'll find yourself that there's things that you favourite doing over anything else, and buildings are one of my favourite things to draw. I also love drawing flowers and plants and drawing people. I like drawing people. Although when I went to art college, I hated drawing people. I remember the life drawing classes and I just wanted to run a mile. I hated it. But now that I do it all the time, I don't mind. So I quite like doing that. So now I'm moving on. I think I'm just using watercolour here. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm just colouring in the little benches, which were not on my original photograph that I found. I have added these on because I've noticed that they were in other photos of the pub. So I've just kind of added those on a later stage to give it a wee bit of character. I just left the door at this point. I still don't know. I just remember the door was brown and it had a gold handle, like an old-fashioned door, and it also had a window because you could see the light shining in because you were standing beside the door. The one thing I can't remember was it 2 or 1 doors. I think it was 2 skinny doors. But I was in with my friends and we were having a few drinks, and I suppose it's only whenever I left that evening I thought, oh, I must paint that little bar because it was very cute. And that I took any notice and didn't look at the doors. They had little plants outside. It was full of tourists, and what I did notice about it was that everybody really dressed up. We were quite surprised because if we go away in our caravan or do things like that there, usually people are very casual, but no, in this bar everybody was very dressed up. So I've painted in the little plant pots. I've painted in the little trees just to give it a little bit of colour. That's my artistic license. You can add things in that maybe are not there. I then went in with, if I remember rightly, I went in with black ink here at this stage. I might actually fast forward this because this is so long. But I went in with the black ink after I do this little section here to outline the windows and things, because they were not just white PVC at the bar and Patsy Dance signs. They were actual black paint, and the white PVC was only along the top 6 or 5 even. Sorry, can't count. So yes, I think what I'll do is I'll maybe speed this along so that it's not so long, this video. And how do you do this? I've just discovered this thing called CapCut, so I'm moving on with it. Anyway. So for the last bit of the picture, I decided to speed it up for you because honestly, it takes me ages to paint one of these whenever I'm watching it back. It's very labour intensive. So here I am, and I've used black ink for this here. So the ink that I use is Sketch ink, and it's by, oh my goodness, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but it's Roher Klingner, I think it is, and it's black. And I like this ink a lot because it doesn't run when you add water. So a lot of inks, you'll notice if you use them, as soon as you add a bit of water to them, they will melt, like they'll dissolve, and which is brilliant if you do inky drawings and you want that look. But when you're going round, it's better to not be like that. And I also painted in the door. I just went for brown because I do remember it being brown. I maybe might have to go back to this in a little while to have a wee look, but I don't think people will really notice. I just remember the gold handle on the door, like an old, like a basic gold handle. And then I go in with pencils, and I use any colouring pencils. I have tons of them. And I go in and I kind of, go around and detail little bits. A bit more paint maybe, just to give the windows. And I didn't know what to do because this building is cream, and I thought, it doesn't, if it has bricks or something, you can kind of put a bit of detail for bricks. But I just decided here just to go in with a little pencil, just to put a bit of shading, just give it a wee bit of texture. And I can't remember the colour I used here, but it was just like a neutral grey, I think. And did the little bit of detail, and just to give a little bit of shading, and coloured in the little Guinness sign that was hanging on the door, the little skylight up above, went over the roof a little bit to make it more look like tiles. And I went over the tops of the chimneys. And then usually the last thing I do is I have a little look, and then I'll colour in the name. And in this case, I coloured it in with the ink. But I'll colour it in with whatever matches the picture, I think, best. And also I do kind of edit these names sometimes in Photoshop and use type fonts instead of my writing, because I think it sometimes looks a bit neater. Here I am just going over the curtains. And the last thing that I usually do when I finish my painting is I get my pen and I sign it. So here I am with my little pen, put in my little name, Julie Dougal, and there it is. There is the finished Patsy Dance bar. I hope you like it. Bye.